Now we are going to get a deep dive into controllers. Basically, now our focus is going to be purely on a controller class. What is that a controller can do? Or using controller, what all we can achieve? How the action methods in the controller can be linked to each other? How the data from one action method can be used in another action method, and so on. So these are the things we want to cover now one by one. So first, yes, we have been talking about controller, but what is controller? All the URLs which are framed in your project, in your application, are going to be mapped to a controller class, rather multiple classes, not just one, multiple classes. And of course, in a controller, we have got multiple action methods. So every controller is responsible for processing the incoming request, handle user input and interactions, very important. Any kind of data which is submitted from client to server can be handled by a controller. Execute appropriate application logic. Remember, it's not business logic. Business logic, I will move it into the model layer. But application logic, if something is there for constructing or making decision about this view or that view, we can do that in the controller itself. By convention, though not compulsory, it can be in controllers folder, not a mandatory thing. Rather, it is not even mandatory to inherit from controller class. A controller need not inherit from controller class. It can be just an ordinary class. Now, a controller is instantiable class in which at least one of the following condition is true. Either the class name is suffixed with controller, that is enough, or a class whose name is suffixed with, it is inheriting from another class which has in its suffix controller, or a class just has any name but the attribute controller is good enough. That's it. ABC you call it, it's okay now. But put an attribute called as controller to it. Even that is fine. So any class, if it ends with controller, any class which inherits from a class which ends with controller, or a class just has an attribute and it doesn't have any parent class. Obviously, by default, the studio generated code has a parent class, that is controller. Now, in .NET Core, controller is common parent class for both web controller as well as web API controller. Remember that. MVC controllers which have views and API controllers which do not have views, in either case the parent class is controller only. It's common parent class. Controller class is responsible for processing stages, locating the appropriate action method to call and validate, that is all basically I have covered earlier, getting the values to be used when an action method as an action method parameter, handling errors that might occur by providing a error view, providing the view for rendering the ASP.NET pages to browser. All these are jobs of controller. Obviously, controller's main task is through action methods. Now, every action method can be having some return type which decides the content to be rendered to the browser. Now, something which is very common but not used for whatever reason by many people is a ability for action method to return a simple data type. Any built-in data type can be returned, as simple as string or integer or double. You can return any intrinsic type as data in the action method, and whatever we return here, that goes to the browser. Let me show you this once. I create a new project. choose the template. We have the built-in controller home, and I just put a method here, public string, let's say hello, and I say return hello. That's it. This is good enough. But how is this going to be invoked? Obviously, home controller / say hello. Let's try. Give here say hello. Home controller. So home / say hello. And we got this. And that is the only output. We don't have any other HTML. Just hello. That's it. Can we return a number? Yes, we can return a number also here. Now, what I would like to do is give here a parameter, fname, lname. So now I would like to return a string. Hello with first name, last name. How will this work? I run this. I give here home. I just get hello. But now I can put question mark, fname, whatever is the parameter. Is equal to, let us say Sandeep, ampersand, lname is equal to Sony. So is controller able to capture the input from the request and provide it as parameter to the action method? Yes, it is able to do that. Yeah, if you want, you can probably give ampersand, middle name is equal to something. I'm not using it, but if you want, you can have that also as parameter. So whatever data is being given through the request, right now we are doing it through query string, but if required, we can also post this data. Whenever a request goes from browser to server, very important thing you should know, there is a URL which is submitted. There is a method, HTTP method we call it, that is submitted, and there is some data which is submitted. Now, URL we all pretty well understand, / something like that is the URL. Then we have method can be get or post, and not only that, we also have other methods like put, delete, and so on. These are all different methods, but remember, browser is going to support only get or post. Browser does not support others. In the sense, using HTML, plain HTML, using HTML form or the browser location bar, you can only submit get. And when we submit the HTML form, we can use post. To use all these methods, we have to construct the HTTP request programmatically, and that is done using Ajax API. And last is the data. So whenever the request is either post or put request or delete request, we want to perform some action based on that data. So that data is over here. And it is optional, may be there, may not be there. But if it is get request, the data is always submitted only in the form of query string, and this is called as query string. Get request data is only in the form of query string. This you have to keep in mind. So now I hope this method is very clear to you. But we do not want to produce a simple output like this. We want to give output which is more meaningful. Most of the time an output of a HTML page. So in those kind of cases, some constructive output if you want to produce with proper status code, with proper message body, in those kind of cases we specify the return type as action result. Now let me show you the very advantage of inheriting it from the controller class is, I comment this and this will give error now. I can't use this now. These are actually methods and these methods are coming from controller class. So if you want to have only methods like this, you don't have to write parent. But if you want to write methods like this which has proper view so that an appropriate CS_HTML file has to be processed, in such case it is kind of mandatory to inherit from the parent controller class. Otherwise it's not required. So now what are the different action results? We have got so many action results. So iAction result is an interface and there are many classes which have implemented action result. Few of them only I have listed here. Bad request object result, bad request basically, a challenge request for authentication, for content result, created at action. I mean there are so many. Empty result, when you don't want to give any output to the browser, just use empty result. File result, that category, forbidden. Now these are all different types of results. Need based, you'll have to use any one of them. For these results, these are methods. Like view is a method. I can change that to bad request. So now if I run, I'll get a bad request response. Bad response we are going to get, which we can see by using F12. Bad request. So these things are all going to be handy in different types of situations. Few I have demonstrated here. Many are there. This is not the end of the story, guys. These are few which I figured out from different places, but there are many more. View is the simplest of all. What it does, when you say view, it actually looks for view result. View is a method which gets me view result object, and the view result object is constructed from the content of .cshtml file. And where is the CS_HTML file? It is supposed to be in your project folder, under project folder, views, under views folder by the name of controller, and under that this .cshtml file should be there. I have shown you before in the first example, but yes, if this is privacy and if you don't want to call it as privacy here and you want to give some other name, what is that we should do? Let's say I put my privacy. So I want my privacy.cshtml should be pros. So I put here my privacy.cshtml. You're supposed to provide view name, but be careful, guys. Many other times what happens is, with view we are also supposed to know that it is overloaded version, and what it expects is object which is model. So does this qualify? Can string be object? Yes. But is string model here? No. That you have to be careful. So here you see now there is a view name, overloaded version, which is of type string. Because there is a specific type, it is going to use this when string is provided. And for all other types, whatever data is passed, that is going to be used as model. So suppose you want to pass a string as model, some string you want to pass it as model, and let's say I want to put some my privacy there or some name. demo. Now I can't pass that here. What is it going to do? It is going to search for a view by name demo, and that is not found, and error will come. So how do we solve this problem? One of my favorite interview questions to the people. Suppose I now give here privacy. What is happening? It's searching for demo.cshtml files. And demo.cshtml file is not there. So what is the solution to this problem? Change this to object. When you change this to object, now it knows that this is modal. So now it is going to go to privacy.cshtml, and to privacy.cshtml, modal is going to be passed as string. Now it will work fantastically. No problem at all. Yeah, now the error is different. We renamed the file. So what if I want to change the name as well as pass the new model? Do that. Use this version, my privacy, modal. Give the view name as well as the model object. And it works. Perfect output. Is it clear? So like that we have content result. Now what is content result? In case you want to produce content which is string, but you can mention string only now. Yes, but what if my string itself has some tags which are XML? My content is a special formatted data now. Then in such case we should use content, and here we can specify MIME type. This is MIME type. So we are telling browser this is XML, and please treat it as XML. That is the difference. We are explicitly mentioning it to be XML content, not the HTML content. Let's see. I just put here Control F5 home/render XML. This is proper XML. Now let's remove this. Many times browser nowadays automatically identifies XML, but not necessary. See, it's not XML. It's taking it as plain text, vanilla text, ordinary text. XML, it will do some basic formatting. So that is the advantage. If you want to provide a MIME type for your content, then you should use render content. Redirect. Simple. When you want to go from one controller directly to another action method, you do not want to display the output of the current action method. You want to display the output from another action method. You do a response.redirect. Very important for somebody who does not know. Let me explain this. Say I go for say hello. Now what I want to do is in say hello, I will do redirect. And I will give the URL as /home/index. Obviously this I have to change now to iAction result. Now if I run this, let's say now I give here say hello. You'll notice that I'm getting the output from index. And very important and interesting thing, the URL here got updated. That means what happened? So if I say this is browser and if this is server, the request actually went for say hello. Under home controller, say hello, the request went for. But when the request was getting processed, it said redirect. That means response went to the browser, and immediately from browser again a request came back, and that request was for index. So browser knows that it is no more getting the response, it is no more the response of say hello, but the response of index. When we should use this? Imagine the code here is for reservation booking. This code is for some kind of flight booking or ticket booking. Now, once the ticket is booked, the receipt is supposed to be generated from the output of another page. Because now if a user does a refresh, now let's say this page got processed. This page got processed and the response of this has come back to the browser. Now if a user does refresh, it is going to send a request for this only. Refresh means what? Repeat the last request. The last request is what? Index.html. That means index output will be again coming. Receipt only will be refreshed. But if say hello was refreshed, what would happen? Another ticket would get booked. So whenever you are doing something like ticket booking and you want some code to be executed only once, ensure that once the code is executed, the response of the page is not directly shown to the user, but you do a redirect and display the response of another action method. So that even on refresh, directly the second action method will execute. It will not go to the previous action method once again. Very, 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 very important concept. So I repeat, I'm actually sending request for say hello. Imagine I'm submitting a form now. HTML form is getting submitted, imagine, for a while. But after submission, on server the code executes and then it does redirect. Now if I do a refresh, it's only sending a request for home/index. It's not sending the request for home/say hello. That's the beauty of redirect. So preferably use redirect wherever possible. Then we have got redirect to action, just another version of the same thing. Here we are able to specify the URL. Here we can specify the action method name and the controller name. That's it. Remember, verify is the action and sample is the controller. It's not the other way. Action method name comes first and the controller name comes next. We also have redirect to route. In case you have done custom routing, you can specify the custom routing name. You have one more important method not mentioned here, redirect permanent. Now what is this redirect permanent? We have two, redirect and redirect permanent. This is little risky. I'll do a new controller. Let's say test controller. I am putting here, let's say, two methods. So index2 is a view, add view, index2. So from index1 and this is index2. Now what I'll do here is, I'll say redirect permanent and I'll give /test/ index2. Now I submit. I'm not sure if I can practically demonstrate. It would be fantastic if in debug mode also it works the way it would work normally. I give you a test. So when I give you a test, it comes here and it breaks there. Now we are doing redirect permanent. Now you press F5. So obviously the response went to the browser, and from browser a request came back for test/index2. Hence this method is executing and we have the response. Now I again change it to index and I press enter. Oh, it's coming because in debug mode. Otherwise what is supposed to happen is, because we have used redirect permanent, browser will automatically directly send the request to this second time onwards. It will not send it to this at all. It will remember that it is a permanent redirect from this to this. So browser will remember in its memory and it will do a direct call to index2. It will not first go to index and then come back and then go to index2. No, it will not do that. Because in debug mode, things change. Let me show, no, even in network configuration, I don't think, because the debugging environment changes everything. Delete, test, request went for test, 301, which is actually a permanent redirect. Remember this number, 301 is permanent, 302 is non-permanent, the regular. And then the request went for index2. I'll clear this. Direct, it has gone to index2. We are able to see in the browser. Direct. Oh, let me change. Sorry. No, it's not showing. Sorry. Yeah. It's not showing like this. But it happens internally like that only. So many times, remember, because you have done redirect permanent, you know the code of this is not executing at all, and every time directly this code is executing. So you might have done some kind of initialization here and that initialization code is not happening and you are going to break your head on that. In debug everything works fine, but in non-debugging mode it will not work like that. Direct response will go from browser to index2, and generally this is supposed to be done only when your URLs are dying. If the old URL is dying, we'll do a permanent redirect. And also the major benefit of permanent redirect is the search engines. So if a URL has been already registered by search engine and for some reason I am now supposed to change the structure of my page, I want to change the URLs itself now. So what will happen to those URLs which are already indexed by Google? We will not kill the old URLs, we'll keep them, but we will do a permanent redirect until Google registers them. Next time whenever Google's come to our site, it will do the parsing of the site, and as it finds that we have a permanent redirect from old URL to new URL, it will update its own index database. For that purpose also, when the URLs are changing, you should use redirect permanent. When the structure of your site is changing, do not abruptly change. Keep the old URLs, do a permanent redirect from old URL to new URL, and gradually over a period of time remove the old URL. Do not abruptly kill it. It's going to be very, very dangerous, especially for search engines, because they do a lot of indexing. So that's how redirect works. Likewise, we have physical path. If you want to render the content of some file as it is, so just append to content root. And how do we get content root? Host environment, and host environment is injected here. Host environment is injected into our controller and that is stored in the member, and from the environment we are getting the content root, and content root has demo.xml whose content we are rendering to the browser. So if you have a physical file whose content has to be as it is rendered, then this is going to be very handy. Physical file. Many times we need it. A PDF file is there, I want to just render the PDF file as it is. Zip file I want to render as it is. Not just XML, it can be anything. Any file as it is we want to render, we don't want to process them. So you can write that code using physical file. Many times we want to produce output in JSON format. So we have got JSON result. A JSON object will be framed and returned. Most of the time these kind of methods are going to be invoked from Ajax. Using Ajax we will call, using services we will call, we get the JSON response on the fly and we process it using our JavaScript, jQuery or Angular, whatever. So those places you use JSON result. Very common, especially in Web API. In case you have a method and you don't want that particular method to be invoked from the browser directly, then you call it as non-action. Non-action. Now that method cannot be invoked from the client. Not found. You should get 404. Though hello is there because it is not declared, it is declared as non-action. So method can exist but marked as non-action. So these are different forms of return type from the same action method. And you can always return from one action method of one controller to another action method of a different controller. Maybe you'll use redirect or redirect permanent or redirect to action. It can be a different controller altogether. You don't have to give the same controller as in the current. No. So yes, just remember that these exist and use them on need basis. That's all about action methods. Thank you.